Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of What Gets You Fired Up. This is a podcast where we bring great people, great entrepreneurs, and great human beings to show us, and not just show us, to tell us what gets them fired up. Today we have an amazing person, and I call it a friend, a mentor, and a great advisor. And it's not just advisor, it's the advisor to icons, legends, and gods of culture and commerce. And he has raised billions, he has reached millions, and he has shared his thoughts with thousands. And he's been endorsed by hundreds. Richard is not just a special advisor, but because it's sought after worldwide by these icons, legends, and gods in so many aspects. But, all these people are seeking counsel on navigating an optimal path upwards in their business, their brand, and their legacy. So I know that Rich is leading the Global Financial Life Research Project, and all that purpose is to consolidate, the data and analysis and research, and finding on something which is always Richie very fond of: the future of relationship with more, and that's in the realm of money, wealth, and worth. Is that right, Richie?
Correct. Good to see you, Christian.
Good to see you. Listen, I know that we know each other for a long time, and I can call you my friend as well, also as a great mentor and a consultant. And today, because I know you've been working with former US presidents, CEOs, billionaires, broadcast tycoons, and I've seen quite a few recently, but also athletes, including gold medalists, and also we have to mention Mike Tyson, because he's been an icon in himself and still is. But you provided all this leadership to all these people. And one thing that it kind of makes me think about this: why are you doing this?
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know why I was doing it. I don't know why it was on me. I think more appropriately positioned as an answer is actually by form of a reflection. My son's 19 years of age. I think we both have known each other for almost half of his life. And as he's gotten older, and you know this because you've got a daughter that's also getting older, they ask different questions. And as he was preparing himself to leave high school and enter university, I found him asking, tougher questions. I mean, young questions was like, what are we doing this weekend, or what's for dinner? But as he got older, he started asking questions like, how did you know that you want to be a communicator? Or how did you know you'd be in business for yourself? Or how did you meet Mike Tyson? Or how did you get to work with US presidents? What was that work like? It forced me to really unearth through a historical voyage of reflecting on just how I came to be. And so with that being done and performing that work and digging deep into my archives and journals and memory banks, I began to unearth just the answer to that very question, like why? And I think we all aspire to be more, to be a greater version of ourselves, to be the legend we see in our mind, to really experience out the version we hold for ourselves in our imagination, in our hearts, and in our dreams, to know that you've accomplished something and you are wealthy in the things that matter, and you're revered and respected and admired and followed and listened to. And so I was drawn to very powerful people very young. I began to understand by reflection. I didn't know this at the time. This was all truly by default of destiny, right? By the choosing of the stars. My life unfolded as it had to. I don't know this for fact until now, looking in reflection. But at the time, I noticed, Christian, that I was drawn to businessmen, powerful leaders, political figures. So as a young boy, I would go to lectures led by businessmen. I would volunteer for politicians that were running for office to go put signs in the ground and help at door knocks, etc. So why that was because I wanted to be that. I wanted to wear a suit. I wanted to be listened to. I wanted to be revered. I wanted to be respected. Because as a young guy coming from a broken home with, I'm inside of a middle-class family, I don't think I saw my dad as someone I aspired to be like. I loved my father, and to this day I still do. But just because I love him doesn't mean I want to be him. There were some things, attributes, parts of who he was, part gifts, part curse, that I just didn't want that package. So I aspired to be more than that, more than the friends I had, more than the environment I was in, more than the neighborhood I grew up in, more than the trouble we all caused and all the shit we did. I knew I wanted to be a different version of myself, and I saw that in them. So I think the why was really aligning my life, my motion, my emotion, my motivations in alignment to the things I aspire to be. And I think that was the why. I was really committed to be that person, to be the person I'm hoping and aiming to become.
Excellent. Listen, I love the answer, and it kind of brings me to the one of the questions, because you've been called advisor to icons, legends, and gods of culture and commerce.
And by the way, to be really clear, because you said gods twice, and I often have to preface this. The only reason why I say God is because Drake, the musician, the R&B artist, calls himself the sixth god, which is to reference the Toronto area code 416, sixth god. And Mike Tyson called himself the god of the ring. So because I had two clients that called themselves gods of the game they played, I've not counseled any god or any figure of faith or religion. I want to make sure I say that. It's all tongue in cheek.
Yes, well, the word itself is self-explanatory when you're talking about culture and commerce. So, but thank you for clarifying that for people that might think it's something with the religion. But when you've heard that first time, what went through your mind? Did you acknowledge that you are there where you put yourself in your mind when you're a boy to become that person, not just a suit, but to represent yourself in a way which you're going to attract these figures?
I think it was a lot simpler than that. When I look back, it's kind of like, fishing or hunting, angling, right? You start when you were a boy, you got your first rifle, you go there with your dad or your grandpa, and you shoot like, a small little peasant, something like a pheasant of some kind, right? Yeah. And you're like, wow. Now I've never hunted, but I have fished. And I remember fishing when you went from the small little trout pond that was stocked and you'd be sure to catch something, and to go into the open water, the deeper you went, the further out you were, the bigger the fish got. And it became exhilarating. And I find that with icons, legends, and gods of commerce and culture, one led to another, and not because I was seeking them. I felt like I was in position that they were seeking me. So for me, it was the thrill of the hunt. It was going deeper, going further, heading into darker waters where I was growing more excitingly about the possibility of being in business with, in alignment to, or sharing a stage alongside of someone of a caliber that would blow my socks off. Just recently, to continue the story about my son, because that exercise was quite interesting. So it provoked me to start writing a memoir for him. It wasn't meant to be a book. It was meant to be a memoir to him, to say, like, this was my journey. And it started by talking a bit about, like, rather than asking me about the worlds I explored and the strange lands I came to discover, you should really ask, how did I ever set foot on a sailboat where I never owned one and the family didn't either? So to appreciate the travels, you got to first ask yourself the question, how did I travel to begin with? So in writing my memoir to my son, I was able to reflect on how I grew up, how I became a young man, and then what I did with that utility. And of course, in that utility, one incredible celebrity after another, I wrote them in succession. And I noticed over time, as I was writing this for dozens and dozens of interactions, that it was compounding. So there's something to be said about the compound effect. Being able to do a great thing followed by a great thing precedes greater things. So like begets like, energy attracts energy. So when you're doing the right thing consistently, it's really hard to not do the same right thing next. So this is why I'm able to say I've met hundreds of these celebrities and icons and legends and sports figures and politicians and heads of state and billionaires and CEOs, not because I walk out the door looking for them, right? It's just that I walk out the door and I'm up to solving a problem that faces them. And as a result, I attract them. It's not like I'm trying to attract they're attracted to me because of the problem I resolved, not because I'm looking for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it actually makes really, really lots of sense, because the attraction, I learned this from my own experience. The more I was trying to chase people, the further away they were going. And the minute I become the person that they wanted me to, well, they needed me to a certain extent, the more they were attracted, like you mentioned yourself, which actually leads me to a question, which is a bifold, I will say, because it goes into what genuinely fires you up every morning when you set up into your, I wouldn't say your work, your journey, because it's a legacy. We both know how much you advocate the legacy, because you sat across from billionaires, world champions, and royalty as well. We know that as well. But is there a common thread in what separates the truly unstoppable from everyone else and the fire that's within?
We both have met a lot of people before, and I think anyone that listens to this podcast will appreciate this too. That have you ever found yourself sitting across from someone and envying their excitement? Being in a state where I look at that person, I'm thinking as they're speaking about their life, their mission, their cause, their vision for themselves, how clear their goals are, and how articulate their ambitions seem to be. And I can't help but say, and I'll share this myself, like I'm thinking, I'm not that clear. I haven't written that stuff down. I don't have that mission that articulated. And I mean, we both know and likely have followed, and if not, have interacted with many people like that, both famous and not so famous. People are just everyday millionaires. So what I know is that I came to learn really early that goals, objectives, and aspirations aren't what lights you up. When those goals, objectives, and aspirations are being relied upon by loved ones, someone other than you is counting on you to perform that day, now you're lit up. And you're lit up because now your life isn't for yours alone to live and to perform in, it's for another. So for me, what I know keeps me focused and keeps me lit up or fired up, as you would say, is that I'm doing something that my son is watching. Now, I could say that if I didn't have a son, then who would be watching? And I would beg to differ and say that if my goals and objectives and aspirations are only limited for my enjoyment, for my own personal pleasure, for my own empowerment, it's not enough to light you up. You have to live for others. You have to lead for others. You have to fall in love with a greater cause that's bigger than you. So whether it's having a child, whether it's making a difference, whether it's a family, whether it's a charity, whether it's your community, whatever it might be, you have got to be able to get fired up for something else. Because here's the point, and I'll say this in closing. Oftentimes, when it's left to your own devices, you'll hit snooze on your life every morning if you could. But when you know someone's counting on you, you've got mouths to feed, a difference to make, a community to change, a world to transform. I've never hit a snooze button in my life. Not in my life. When I was a teenager, I hit it every day, except Saturday. But when I became an adult, it was always, it's going to be, and it's up to me. So I think for anyone listening to this conversation, especially you and I as friends, and we have a history together, is it's hard to get motivated. Sometimes it's tough to be inspired. Sometimes you lose sight of what inspires you. You lose it. Sometimes there's so much shit going on in your life, from bills and bullshit and bad relationships and ex this and an ex that and the economy and geopolitical events. There's so much that can create so much fog. It's hard to see clearly through it. But all you've got to do is trust your own feet and your own hands. You don't have to rely on your vision. You got to rely on your heart to say, I know what I've got to do next. And I got to trust myself to do that one thing. Just one step before the next, followed by the next. And you keep moving. Make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And I knew you're going to come with like a really in-depth response, because that's how all the conversation, then the old conversation we had together, they all come into this enlightenment and in really like depth conversations. And I want to ask you a question which is about old conversations. And we talk about a lot of, especially in your calls, we talk about the finance and the money. So what would you say it's an old conversation around money that most people are still trapped in? And what does the new one look like in your mind? Because you've been in this industry for more than 30 years now.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's interesting. I've always had a fascination, having come from a world of little, to recognize how people who've got more relate to it. I was always in awe. I mean, I fell into the financial services business when I was literally only 16 years of age. I started off as a cold call cowboy, making 300 cold calls a day every day. That was my job, to find new account holders for the firm in which I worked for. And I mean, that was it. I mean, people needed a stockbroker or an investment advisor to access the thing called the stock market. So you can invest in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, puts, calls, and warrants. And so only the wealthy or those with money actually did that. So I got to interact with a lot of people in a very condensed way, in a very compressed fashion, that had money. Like, unlike my neighborhood, or unlike where I grew up, or unlike my part of town, there was a lot of people that didn't have any money. And I was one of them. So to be able to work in a place that I was being schooled on how to get your relationship right with money, it was an interesting and fascinating education that I never thought I signed up for. But what you come to realize is that everybody that has their own set of values, views, opinions, and beliefs about anything, whether it's money or love or business or entrepreneurship or working hard or fine dining or cuisine or cooking or their sense of decorum, all of that and largely was adopted. So when you were born, Martin Heidegger, a very celebrated philosopher, once said that we are born into a state of what's called thrownness. And thrownness is you had no say in the matter of where you arrived and what condition you did. So, for example, you, Christian, you had no say in the hair you'd have, the color skin you've got, the language you would speak, the origination you were born into. I mean, there's people being born right now in Ukraine, where currently it's a place of war. And children being born into that environment had no say in being born into a state of war. They wouldn't ask for that. So thrownness is really the state in which you were thrown into that which you had no say in. So the other things you were thrown into that you had no say in is who your parents were, the conversations they had, the beliefs and values that they've got, right? The religion you had to adopt, the environment you were born into, the conversations that orbited you. So when you really look at your history, you are the culmination of your entire heritage, history, and its culture. So all of that is what I'd like to call adopted. You've got adopted sets of beliefs, values, and views that have shaped you, your experience of life, and life's experience of you. So if you don't like where you are, if you don't like what you've got, and if you're not happy with where you are at this particular time, you've got to ask yourself, well, do my adopted values and beliefs serve that greater vision I've got? And if they don't, guess what you're able to do? Start to unplug and remove the things that don't serve you. Because none of these beliefs, values, and views are permanent. They are not who you are. They're just what you've adopted. So you can actually unlearn. It's kind of like taking your phone. Oops, I just dropped it. Taking your phone, and you take a phone, and if you downloaded an app and you thought you'd use it, how many people have ever actually downloaded an app, thought you'd use it, but didn't use it at all? What do? Bloop, you remove it.
Yes, delete it, yeah.
You delete it. We are very much the same. So to close that thought up is this, that for me, I know that I had a number of beliefs and values that didn't align with the environment I was growing up in as a young man. And so the longer I saw that, the greater upset I experienced. So I elected to remove myself from that environment. That's why I left home at 16. That's why I distanced myself from my father. That's why I distanced myself from my mother, because they were conversations that conflicted with what I wanted to be and the conversations I wanted to be in. However, it did come at a cost, where I lost an intimacy with my mother. I lost an intimacy with my father. And that was my choice. So I paid a fee for that. I paid a cost for that. But I'm not any bit or a part of who they were and what they were, from my opinion. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I really relate with your background than your childhood, although it's different, it's the same, because I was the same when I was about 14, 15. I decided to do my own journey away from my mom and my dad, because in my head, I still believe that I can do more and have more. And the fact that they were trapped into what my dad used to be an alcoholic, and my mom was working away just to bring money to the table and food and all that stuff. So I've seen what they were doing, and I didn't want to have the same. I wanted more. And this is where I ask about being trapped into it, because I remember when I was there and I made that choice, which, like you said yourself, it brought a compromise. You lose some, you win some. But this is where the compromise or the comparison comes into place, because there are lots of people still saying that money doesn't grow on trees, or money is the root of or evil, going back to the religion we were talking about gods earlier. But do you think that more money makes people happier, or that is the biggest financial myth of our time?
I think you're right. I think money, for example, let's just take that old adage out as an example. If you take money as the root of all evil, I mean, I've seen some great philanthropists do great work with money. I've seen some incredible billionaires who've done good by people. I've seen billionaires who haven't done a damn thing with a red cent that they've got. So I think that based on your intention with wealth, based on that intention with wealth, it will shape your relationship to its impact on the world. So there are people that recognize philanthropy as a great act of contribution. Some people see philanthropy as a great means of making more money because of the tax savings and the tax deductions. They see that as a maneuver. So I think that is just a great example of one statement that we've adopted over centuries of saying it, that money doesn't grow on trees, or of course money is the root of all evil, to cite the two that you just did. And there's dozens and dozens others. But remember, if it doesn't serve you, right? If it doesn't serve you, it kills you. So all these thoughts, beliefs, and values that we've adopted, we've got to really put in check. I think in school they should teach kids on how to really do an inventorization of their thoughts, their thinking, their views and values on various parts of their life. And see which ones resonate with them, see which ones light them up, and see which ones they can make do without, and start to really early on filter out and teach them the way in which they can remove some of that programming, some of those views, some of those perspectives that don't serve them. Because oftentimes a big part of what weighs people down isn't their ambitions. It's actually the adopted belief systems that are in contrary to what they really believe and what they want to believe.
Yeah, I really love that, because you said something which I quote as well, and tell, because we both of us work sometimes with people that they are successful on paper, right? And they have lots of BS in not in just mind, but also on the paper. And I change that BS into not what usual people think about is, and I move it into what you said earlier about belief system, because the belief system, it is the BS to a certain extent, because that's where your performance psychology comes into place and your limitations and everything else. But you said all this very often, legacy by design, not by default. And I want to ask you a question. Would that performance psychology and wealth and the financial performance with it, is this something that it's common denominator that you've seen with the people you work with, or you notice a trend within, let's say, overall? Because right now the world is small but big at the same time. Would that be something that it's connected when people live more by default than design because of their performance psychology and wealth?
Well, I think, Christian, that's a great question. I think that right now, when you see that the world has baby boomers, those born between 1946 and 1964, the largest populous cohort in human history, one of them turns 75 every 7 seconds. And so what they confront is their own humanity, right? The very fact that what they face is an end closer than their beginning. And so as you've got, during all this unfolding, is the greatest wealth transference in human history, $1 trillion transferring hands in Canada, over $100 trillion in net worth in America, over $200 trillion more around the world. You've got a younger generation that does not adopt and is not aligned to some of the old traditional views and values. In other words, they've somehow understood and managed to unplug some of the thinking that doesn't serve them. They've elected different servings. Now, why do I say that? You reference performance, and in the same vein as money. When I think what people realize is that legacy is more personal than financial. I'll say that one more time. Legacy now is more personal than financial. Legacy in the old days was about inheritance, right? Leaving a legacy, which dates back to the earliest medieval times, was all a function of leaving behind name, title, deeds, flag, rights. So, in other words, your legacy is really the wars fought, the battles won, the flags raised, the territories gained. Today, legacy is not so much about stuff as much as it's about significance. And this really hit me hard when once, and I was in this office actually, right here where I'm sitting. And I don't know if you can tell, there's books on the right and there's books on the left. And my son sat right here, like right off camera. And he kind of sat up beside me. There's a chair right there. And he said, "Hey, Dad, what are you working on?" And I shared with him what I was. And he's looking at the bookshelf, very young at the time, looking at the bookshelf. And he said, "Wow, these are really great books. Have you read them all?" I said, "No, I haven't read all these books, but I've read most." And he goes, "Why do those ones sit at the top? They look special." I go, "Oh, they are special. These are collector editions, first press. That's Shakespeare works and Abraham Lincoln's works, and these were all collectible sets." Right over there, those ones up there, and those up there, you can't really see the top shelf based on the camera's limitations. And he said, "Wow, that's amazing. What are you going to do with them?" he asks. And I said, "Oh, son, I'm so glad you asked this. You see, when I knew you were coming, I started these collections so that I knew I can leave something for you when I was gone. So I started with a book collection, but I didn't start there. I stopped there. I went off and built an album collection, and I built a collection of this, and I built a collection of that. And I got all these collections in my house, Christian, all for the sake of leaving something for him when I was to pass." And so I looked at him. He didn't look too pleased or happy or excited. I thought, well, that's strange. Maybe I didn't explain this well enough. I said, "Son, you know what that means, right? Like, when I pass on, all this is yours." And he said, "I don't want any of it." And I said, "Why? Do you know how much this would be worth? Do you know what kind of value this is? Do you realize what a first press this and a first copy of that and a limited edition that is worth?" He goes, "Dad, none of it matters to me unless I get to share it with you." And I'm talking like this is a kid who in a moment taught me something inside the world of financial life, legacy, philosophy, and psychology in an instant, in a very simple way. So it rattled me to my core, and I had to step back and ask myself, do we have legacy right? Is it about what we leave? And I realized it's something different, and here it is. I believe that legacy is not shaped by what you leave alone, but how you've lived, how you've led, how you've laughed, how you've loved. And depending on how you've done all of that, that shapes what you leave, and what you leave defines your legacy. So in other words, legacy isn't left, legacy is lived. So if you realize that right now you're living your legacy. So right now with my son now at 19 years of age, I know he's watching me. I know he's studying me. I know that when there's a teachable moment to lean in, slow down, and teach more. I know that when there's a learnable moment or a breakdown, I slow down and say, "Son, this is what I would do if I were you. This is what I've done in the past and it didn't work." I'm living my legacy so that when I'm gone, and that will imminently, inescapably, unapologetically happen, I've left my legacy based on how I lived, how I fathered, how I loved, how I laughed, how I helped people. So for me, I mean, it's touching because, and that's what gave rise to my whole new urban financial life philosophy on legacy. Legacy was not just a thing you left, it was a mindset for how you lead. And that gave rise to a whole new legacy movement, which I know you already know about. Yeah. And we don't need to spend time today. We'll do that another time. But for me, that's really it. That's about as clear as I can get. Legacy is personal as much as it is financial, and it is the ultimate act of your own personal performance.
No, I love that because you live with excitement, and you can see it when you speak. Because when you speak about wealth, leadership, and human potential, you have to be the one who's leading by example in order to, for other people like your son or my daughter, to follow and look up to a certain extent, or emulate, like you said it before. And you know, you've been doing this for 30, well, you have more than 30 year experience in this. And what if it'll be one thing that is keeping you up at night, not because of worry, but with excitement, because I know you get excited like me when I need to crack something. What will be one limited belief that people still have that you still haven't figured out to
Well, I don't know what most people's limiting beliefs are. I mean, I know what gets them stuck, stalled, or quite frankly stopped. When they get stuck, stalled, or stopped, it's usually because there is a limiting belief. I can't do it. I don't know enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not ready. It's not time. It shouldn't be me. I don't have the money. I don't have the effort. I don't have the bandwidth. There's always going to be a reason that justifies the why you're not. For me, what stops me is I know that sometimes I can only do so much at the same time. I can only do so much at the same time. And then I get into orbit with dear friends of mine like David Meltzer, who I'm really happy to hear that you've connected with, where I've watched him. We just recently were in Chicago together for a conference, and I hung out with him for a couple days, and I was mesmerized by how optimal he managed his time. This guy must have done at least 3 or 4 meetups while the conference was going on, held a couple of meetings, had a couple of roundtable discussions, all inside the same period I was there. Now, I'm a pretty hardworking guy, and everyone around me understands that. They observe that. They say, Rich, you're a hardworking guy. But I observe with David Meltzer, I'm nowhere close to a hardworking guy. That guy there is on. And by the way, do you want to know why he's a hardworking guy and he doesn't even experience it out that way? Because he's on a mission to touch a billion people. So is a billion people bigger than him? Of course it is. 1 billion versus one person. It's easy math. So yeah, he's on fire to do that. So you can see that the goal and aspiration he lives is greater than him. That's why he's up at the crack of dawn. He's in bed when I mean everyone's asleep. And that's important. So for me, I know what startles me in my sleep is I don't have enough time. So I feel like where my breakdowns are is I've got to manage myself and the time I've got to do the things I must in sequence that makes sense. Because oftentimes we can get distracted by lots of things. Phone rings, you get caught up on a great Netflix series. You thought to yourself, I'd watch one episode, but 6 episodes later, you're like, oh my God, I've lost track of time. You know what I mean? It's easy to lose yourself. We're only human. I do too. But exactly, yeah. But what keeps me up at night for me personally is like, oh man, I got a lot done, but I could have done more because I'm up to so much. So it's be kind to yourself, but schedule everything. If you don't schedule it, you won't crush it.
I mean, it is indeed. And I like because you pointed out so much how important it is to schedule your time. And lots of people think about and speak about time as they want to manage it. But we both know that the thing you need to manage is yourself, not the time, because the time you can't change it. The time goes even if you want it or not. So it's great that you made that analogy, and also brought David as an example of how many things he's doing in the same time where other people are just sitting and watching the conference, for instance, which is, it's interesting because I used to do my time in 15-minute slots. And then I moved away from it. And then I realized how much I was losing because I lost that control over my own diary and let the time just fly by and get distracted by Netflix and other stuff.
But you've got to just to push back. I mean, look, I've got a really great sand clock here, and inside that sand clock is 15 minutes. So back in the day when I used to coach people, I leave it here as a reminder. I don't use it anymore, but I used to. I had so many clients. I would only coach them in 15-minute increments, so I can fit 4 in an hour. And then I realized I'm not paying them a service. I'm commercializing what I'm doing so it fits inside of my view, but 15 minutes sometimes isn't enough time. And so I started to realize I'm a bit more of a fluid human and leader than I am a restrictive one. If I was a dentist, I understand 50-minute increments. If I was a lawyer, I understand 50-minute increments, because you can handle things within 15 minutes. I get that. You can do a quick, a cap filling. You can do answer a quick legal question. I get that. But when you're in the human betterment business, sometimes you just can't solve the problem in 15 minutes. And so I think there's two conversations we're having. When it comes to time, you're right. You can't manage time. You have to manage yourself in time. So you've got to have the way you relate to time and the way you have others relate to you in your time. So there's you and how you manage yourself in your time. And then when you have clients or customers and how they deal with you, you can give them some parameters because they too may not understand that your time is important and valuable given the commitments you've already made. So that's a two-way cooperative, collaborative construct. You've got to be able to say, hey, I've got only 15 minutes to solve this problem for you. If you think we can do it, let's go. Right? Oh, sorry, you've got 14 minutes now. Let's go. Right? Yeah. So off you go. Yeah. If someone says, oh, hold on, I'm going to need more than 15 minutes, say, great. So how much time do you think you'll need? I'll need an hour. Well, then let's pick another day in the week where I'll have that hour where I don't have things nipping at my heels because I've already committed myself today. That's you managing yourself inside your time, but also as a result, as powerful as your relationship is to your time and its value, you're able to manage other people's expectations of you in same.
No, it sounds very well put. Like you always say, you know exactly how to explain it to somebody like a 5-year-old kid would understand that. And I really appreciate that because that's the point of making that declaration of who you are and where you're going by acknowledging the things in different way and from different perspectives. But you have two things going on, but the same one at the same time. The Global Financial Life Research, the project, you've been doing it for a long time, but also you brought into light and more upfront the legacy one. What are you finding in these two? Are people evolving from their relationship with money, or are we regressing from that and we are less unstoppable than we want to be if you look into the world of most powerful people that you're surrounded with and by?
Well, listen, no matter if you're just getting started, if you're well on your way, whether you're an accomplished millionaire or billionaire for that matter, and I've got dinner with one tonight, I'll tell you one thing, what they all share in common is everyone wants more at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, that the motivation for more is alive and intact. What is different though, Christian, is artificial intelligence has really disrupted the journey that humankind is on. And what I mean by that is what it's done is that it's almost like playing basketball, if you understand the analogy, and having a shot clock, if you're familiar with the game. The shot clock is that once the offensive team has the ball, right, they've got 24 seconds on the clock to shoot. If they do not shoot, the ball is forced into turnover. They lose possession of the ball. So until that clock was introduced, the reality is that the offense team can actually possess that ball for as long as they want. The pace of the play is actually much slower. The excitement is no longer, in fact, high, but it's low. And therefore, the engagement of the fans ends up being depleted. Why do I say that? AI started a shot clock. And I mean proverbially. So what that means is that AI, as fast as it's growing, its capacity is expanding, its strength is fortifying, and our familiarity to it is growing. The reality is that AI is changing the way in which we reach, compress, and learn things new. I think that now the world is really going to be dominated by math over man, right? Function over fantasy. So in the world that I've been in, and I've been fascinated by it for nearly 4 decades, is that getting people's relationship right with money, wealth, and worth, those are 3 distinctions that make up one's financial life. Everyone's aiming for the same thing, which is they want to have a great financial life, one that is whole, one that is complete, and one that's performing. Not trying, not hoping, performing. And as a result of all that, what I've noticed is that legacy is now fitted inside of the financial arc, because when you start, when you grow, when you save, when you invest, and then you retire, there's a stage in our life called the third act, where legacy matters, passing it along, thinking about succession, thinking about protection, etc. These are all functions. But when it came to understanding from our financial intelligence global research initiative, we came to discover something new. Where, yes, one, our relationship to the idea of legacy was dated, so we updated it. Legacy isn't shaped by what you leave alone, it's shaped by how you live, how you loved, how you led. Great. But that said, where is the knowledge to do better with what we've got? And that exists in a new domain of financial intelligence. AI is artificial intelligence, but it's based on human intelligence. So human intelligence already exists. That's the reason why artificial intelligence exists. Without human intelligence, there is no artificial intelligence. It's based on the aggregation of human total intelligence. But financial intelligence is something that is actually a composite, a hybrid of both. It's part machine and it's part man, where the ingenuity limited to human beings to invent new ways of creating new outcomes is, quite frankly, limited. That's where AI is going to do a lot of the thinking. Said in English, it's doing a lot of the hardest work, and it's figuring out some of the toughest challenges known to mankind in minutes, in hours, in days. Things like decoding the human genome, or being able to understand how to cure cancer, or understanding what the long-term prognosis of climate care should look like, et cetera, et cetera. So what I believe is that financial intelligence is going to drive a new financial leadership. And it's going to give rise to a very new way of people managing and working with their financial lives and futures. And I'm excited to be on the cutting edge of that, because it's new and it's fresh and it's now. So to me, it's legacy mindedness is not just a function of the end, but it actually is just as much as about the beginning. And so that's really important as well. Does that all make sense to you?
Yeah, no, it does. And I'm glad that you actually brought into the conversation the AI, because lots of people are talking about it. And in closing, because I don't want to hold you more than I want, I know you how busy you are. Lots of people are talking about now the AI is taking over, and you express this quite well, that it's not, because it's still led by the human intelligence. But what will be, from your perspective and your point of view, and obviously the financial and the legacy connected together, what will be one way which somebody with, let's say, not as much knowledge as yourself, or as much as the interaction with other people like yourself, like me, what will be something that you will tell them to help them to become unstoppable in their way to build their own legacy and learn the financial aspects of it?
I say lean into three things. Number one is really lean into understanding your own human intelligence. Being clear around what you value, what you view, your perspectives you've got, the things you must unlearn, relearn, or learn new. That's just number one. Embrace your human intelligence. Number two is embrace your own financial intelligence. Some people would often call that literacy, but I don't like the word literacy, because it's only about language. So if you take the word, let's say, risk, there's one word that's very synonymous with investing or saving or wealth management. Well, risk to my grandmother means something completely different to me. Why? We're generations apart. She might be risk adverse because she lived through times of war, and she had none to anything to eat at some times in her life when she was growing up. For me, risk is all about a calculated, right, mathematical production of my relationship to the risk profile of making a deployment of money, capital, or investment. So what I'm saying is, I think literacy is a dated term in itself that actually is poorly shaping our relationship to intelligence. Literacy with clarity creates intelligence. So understand your own financial intelligence, understand your financial life, your financial future, and what's required to have it unfold for you in a way by design and not default. But the third is embrace AI. And don't embrace AI like put it to work, have it make really cool videos, have it do funny things, assign it homework so that you don't have to go to school the next day having had to do any of it. It's not about it being a utility to fill a gap. It should be a utility that complements you bridging gaps. AI is a powerful tool, like computers were 30, 40 years ago. They weren't meant to replace us. They were meant to complement us. And although the innovation did replace some types of work, it actually emboldened us to do greater things, greater work, greater productions of using of our time. So I think if we lean into those three domains of intelligence, human, financial, and artificial, you'll be in the co-pilot seat in a rocket ship heading into the new, and the now.
I love it. I love that. And I love it because it kind of embodies everything what you actually say all the time. It's about evolvement rather than scarcity. The minute you evolve and you bring all these three main aspects of your life and bring more to where you are, the higher you're going to get. And if you catch that train, like you said, you're on the edge of that financial movement and intelligence, then everything just comes back to you because you're evolving. You're like pulled into it rather than suck into it. So
it's survival of the fittest. And if you look at the laws of nature, when you look at all the species on the planet, it's you either evolve or die. And so for us, resisting the temptation of leaning in and learning more and understanding AI and putting it to work and using it rather than resisting it, that's only going to lead to the annihilation of you yourself for the goals and dreams and aspirations you've got. It is a technology. It is not going anywhere, and it's only going to get stronger. So you might as well lean in and learn more rather than resist, because it will persist.
No, I love that. And I also want to say a big thank you, Richie, for your time. And, it's been a great conversation, and really excited to see what comes next, and really excited to see you again soon, because it's been a while, and I think soon we're going to see each other more. And I'm looking forward to see what's next, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, I'm not looking forward to seeing what's next. Let's create what's next. Let's engineer what's next. Let's plan what's next. And that is going to be the embodiment of what we taught today. I'm going to get myself out to your part of the world. We're going to do something special, likely a workshop, maybe even a multi-day. We're going to make sure that we do something in a special way. I've got lots of friends on the other side of the pond, and you do too. So that's what we'll look forward to doing. Let's look at doing something like that in the spring or summer. Give me an excuse to come out there, have some scotch and some fun with my dear friend Cristian. Congratulations on the relaunch of your podcast. Godspeed to you. You're one of the most courageous human beings I know. I know your story. I know what pains you. I know your trials and tribulations, and to be sitting here being a stand for people and being here as a champion for what's next for them is a very heroic place for you to stand. And I know with your strong shoulders, your clear-mindedness, and your heart, I know that people can really count on you to do just that for them. So well done. Welcome back to the Sound Waves. It's been a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And thank you for joining us today, Richard.
Okay, brother.
Thank you.